Stay home. I'm embarrassed to introduce you as my boyfriend, she said before her high school reunion. I said, absolutely. Then I used that night to move out completely. She came home at 2 a.m. to empty rooms and a note, "You don't need to be embarrassed anymore." Hey viewers, before we move on to the video, please make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button if you want to see more stories like this. Thanks. The dress was a slash of crimson against the beige wall of our bedroom. Chloe stood in front of the mirror, turning slowly, studying her reflection with a critical eye I knew wasn't meant for me. "Do I look like I've peaked?" she asked, her voice tight with an anxiety I didn't fully understand. "You look incredible," I said, and I meant it. I sat on the edge of our bed, the same one we'd put together 2 years ago while laughing through useless instructions. Now my compliments were nothing more than background noise. She sighed dramatically, like the weight of the world had settled on her shoulders. Ugh! Jessica posted the guest list. Tyler Briggs is coming. He started some crypto advisory firm or something. Drives a G-Wagon. I nodded, unsure what response she expected. I'd been hearing about the 10-year reunion for months. What started as a casual maybe had evolved into a full-scale campaign. New dress, new haircut, sudden obsession with spin classes. My role, I assumed, was to be the supportive boyfriend, the arm candy, or maybe just the arm. I tried stepping into the conversation. "So what's the final plan for Saturday? Are we meeting the group there?" Or she stopped turning. In the mirror, her eyes met mine briefly before sliding away again. She smoothed the red fabric over her hips. About that, the room went still. The hum of the central air filled the silence between us. "Look, Mark," she began, finally facing me. Her expression was carefully balanced between apology and condescension, the same look she used with Hen explaining something she thought should have been obvious to me. "It's a specific crowd, a lot of successful people from my year. Lawyers, consultants, people who, own things. Sarah's husband is a cardiothoracic surgeon. Amanda married the tech bro who sold his app." I stayed quiet. A cold knot started forming in my stomach. She continued, gesturing vaguely in my direction. "I can't spend the whole night explaining what you do or why you're still, finding your path. It becomes this whole thing. He's in IT. He's between projects. He's looking into certifications." She mimicked the words in a faintly mocking tone, like she was reciting something tedious from memory. "It's embarrassing." The words settled heavily in the air. Solid. Ugly. A memory hit me then, sudden and sharp. 2 years earlier, in this same room, she'd been crying after a failed final presentation for her marketing internship, convinced she had destroyed her future. I'd held her, ordered her favorite pho, and spent the entire night rebuilding her presentation on my laptop using the same skills she was mocking now. "You're my rock," she'd whispered back then, her face swollen from crying. "I'd be lost without you." Now I was the thing she felt lost with, the weight dragging her down beneath the G-Wagons and surgeons. The cold feeling spread through me, but alongside the hurt came something else. Clarity. Sharp, icy, absolute. I looked at her, the flawless makeup, the anxiety rooted entirely in her own social standing. The woman I loved felt separated from me by a pane of glass, tapping against it not to come back, but to point toward everything she found more interesting on the other side. I didn't get angry. I didn't argue. Whatever fight had been left in me disappeared in one quiet exhale. All that remained was the truth. "Absolutely," I said. My voice was calm and flat. Not agreement. Not surrender. Just acknowledgement of a fact she had already stated. "You are an embarrassment. Therefore, you should not come." Message received. Relief washed across her face. She mistook my calm for compliance, for the same easygoing nature that always bent to her will. She smiled, the tension leaving her shoulders, then drifted over and kissed my cheek. Dry. Routine. Transactional. "You're the best," she said brightly. "I'll make it up to you. We'll order that fancy sushi tomorrow. Just us. Honestly, it'll be better than dealing with all that drama anyway." She turned back to the mirror and grabbed her phone. "I need to text the group. Jessica was betting you'd throw a fit." She laughed softly as her thumbs moved across the screen, probably typing. Crisis averted. He's cool with it. I was cool with it. Just not in the way she believed. "Absolutely," I repeated quietly, almost too soft to hear. A promise to myself. The campaign was over. The war, however, had just begun, and I had already chosen the only strategy that made sense. Total, silent, irreversible withdrawal. The click of the apartment door locking behind her became the starting pistol. For a full minute, I didn't move. I stood alone in the living room, listening to the silence. It was different from the tense quiet from earlier. This silence was hollow, empty, like a stage after the actor delivers her final devastating line and walks off into the dark. The performance was over. I walked to the window and pulled back the blinds just enough to see the street below. Her rideshare pulled away, its red taillights dissolving into the Saturday night traffic, then disappearing completely. The icy clarity that had settled into me during her speech had hardened into something solid and guiding. There was no anger, no grief. Not yet. Only a list of tasks, suddenly clear and urgent. My phone was already in my hand. I scrolled to Jake Brother and pressed call. He answered on the second ring, video game noise spilling through the speaker. "Hey, shouldn't you be getting ready for the big night?" "I need the truck," I said, my voice steady and almost robotic. The game sound stopped. "What's up? You okay?" Chloe told me not to come. Said I'd embarrass her in front of her successful friends. I delivered it like a news headline. "I'm leaving tonight. While she's out. I need the truck, and I need your help." A stunned silence followed, then a low whistle. "Holy, are you serious? Where are you going?" "Your couch. For a few days. Then I'll figure it out. Can you come?" "I'm on my way." No more questions. That was why he was my first call. The next 2 hours became a lesson in detachment. I moved through our shared apartment not like a heartbroken boyfriend, but like someone conducting a salvage operation. My belongings were sorted not by emotion, but by practicality and ownership. I started with the essentials. Passport, birth certificate, laptop, the small lockbox containing the jewelry my grandfather left me. I packed 2 suitcases with clothes, focusing on practical things: jeans, work polos, jackets. I left the nice shirt she bought me for her cousin's wedding hanging in the closet. Let it haunt the empty space. The furniture required careful calculation. Over the years, we'd built the apartment out of a tangled mixture of hers and mine. The bed frame was hers, trendy, unstable, constantly rattling because she insisted on it. The mattress was mine, bought with my first decent bonus. I stripped the sheets and left them in a pile. Then I dragged the mattress into the living room and propped it against the wall. A white flag made of memory foam. The bookshelf was mine too, solid oak from a flea market. I emptied it. Box after box of my books hit the floor with dull, heavy thuds. My TV, the 55-inch one I'd saved months for, came off the entertainment center she picked out. I wiped every profile from it. Every login, every trace of my viewing history. I unsubscribed from the shared streaming accounts. Digital erasure. Jake arrived with fury and concern written across his face. He took one look at me calm, carefully wrapping coffee mugs in newspaper, and simply nodded. "Just tell me what to lift." We worked in efficient silence. My desk, my chair, the worn but comfortable armchair from my old apartment. We never talked about Chloe. We talked about weight distribution, about the best angle for getting the mattress down the stairwell without scraping the walls. Halfway through, while carrying a box of my kitchenware, the good knives I bought, my cast iron skillet, Jake stopped. "Dude, are you okay? You're freaking me out a little. It's like you're a robot." I set the box down and looked around the apartment. It was turning into a carcass. A place where a life once existed, now being methodically stripped for parts. "I feel very clear," I said truthfully. The pain was still there, but distant, buried deep beneath the permafrost. All she did was turn on a light. She showed me exactly what this room really was. "I'm just choosing to walk out of it." He shook his head slowly, something like reluctant respect in his expression. "Okay, then let's finish clearing the room." The final touch was the note. I sat at the bare kitchen counter. The stools were hers. On the last remaining chair, I took out a sheet of printer paper and a pen. No dramatic speeches, no accusations, just facts, laid out as cleanly and permanently as the empty spaces in the apartment. "Chloe, you don't need to be embarrassed anymore. I've taken all traces of me. My half of the rent is paid through the end of the month. The key is on the counter. Do not contact me." Mark, I read it once. It was perfect. No room for argument. No opening for drama. Just a door shutting, written in 12-point Times New Roman. I placed it neatly in the center of the kitchen counter and set my key beside it. The last object connecting me to that place. See, Jake and I carried the final load downstairs. The back of his truck looked like a Tetris stack made from pieces of my life. He slammed the tailgate shut. That's it. I looked up at the apartment windows, still technically mine, for a few more hours. The living room light glowed over the empty floor. "That's it," I repeated. I didn't feel free. I didn't feel vindicated. I felt light. Not the comforting kind of lightness. The unsettling kind, like an astronaut whose tether has snapped loose, drifting silently into a vast star-filled void. "Let's go," I said. We drove away. I never looked back. The note, the key, the empty rooms. None of it belonged to me anymore. It was a museum exhibit now. She would walk into a carefully arranged display titled, "The Consequences of Your Words." My part in it was finished. The first week at Jake's place felt like sensory deprivation. His spare room was basically a box white walls, one window facing an alley, and a futon that groaned like a dying animal. It was perfect. There was nothing of us there. No decorative throw pillows she insisted on. No scented candles that always gave me headaches. There was no trace of her perfume lingering on the pillows anymore. Just sterile, neutral space. The silence became something physical. For the first few days, I simply existed inside it. I went to work at the IT help desk. I came home. I ate takeout with Jake in front of his TV. We didn't talk about her unless he carefully brought it up, and when he did, my answers stayed short, factual, and emotionless. She hasn't contacted me. I blocked her number. The apartment is empty. Eventually, he stopped asking. The numbness became a kind of protective shell. Inside it, I quietly began the meticulous process of dismantling the life I had built with her. I changed my primary email address. I unfollowed and muted every mutual friend, every restaurant, every band she had introduced me to on social media. It wasn't anger. It was gardening. Pulling weeds to figure out what, if anything, remained of my own landscape underneath. The shell finally cracked around day 10, not because of sadness, but because of a sudden, overwhelming awareness of possibility. The peace inside that blank little room wasn't simply the absence of her. It was the presence of options. One evening, instead of scrolling mindlessly through my phone, I opened my laptop. For years, I'd talked about getting a cloud security certification. Every time, Chloe's eyes glazed over. "Sounds expensive, babe, and you're already exhausted after work." So I always let it go. This time, I found the course. I registered. I paid for it using the money I'd been saving for the vacation she wanted us to take. The click of the "Confirm Purchase" button felt more satisfying than any kiss I could remember. I started waking up early. The silence no longer felt empty. It was filled with my own thoughts. I'd make coffee and serve Tutty for an hour before work. The complicated protocols and architectures became soothing in their own way. They followed rules, cause and effect. They weren't human emotions. I reached out to Leo, an old college friend who had drifted away after a double date where Chloe once dismissed him as kind of a downer. We met for a beer. He asked what happened. I gave him the 3-word version. She was embarrassed. He didn't push further. We talked about basketball, about his job, about the absurd corporate software both of us dealt with every day. At one point, I laughed. A real laugh. It felt rusty in my throat. It didn't feel like betrayal. It felt like remembering a language I'd forgotten how to speak. This became my new normal. Smaller, quieter, but completely self-directed. Sometimes the ghost of her voice still echoed in my head. Embarrassing. But it was fading now, drowned out by the sound of my keyboard clicking, the scratch of notes across paper, Leo's easy laugh. Utter. The first crack in her world arrived through a muted notification. 3 weeks after I left, a message appeared from Derek, a mutual friend who had always stayed mostly neutral. The preview glowed on my screen. "Hey man, hope you're doing okay. Saw Chloe last weekend. Wow, just wow." A cold, clinical curiosity settled over me. I opened the message. "Derek. Hey man, hope you're doing okay. Saw Chloe last weekend. Wow, just wow. Derek. We were at that bar on Elm. She was there with Jessica. Looked like she'd been crying. Derek. She asked if I'd talk to you for her. I said no. Derek. Then she got this wild look and started saying you abandoned her, that you ghosted her over some stupid misunderstanding. Derek. Jessica kept trying to shush her and get her to leave. It was a whole scene. Derek. What the hell happened?" I stared at the words. Abandoned, ghosted, a scene. I felt nothing. No pity, no satisfaction, just information. I typed back carefully, neutrally. "Me. We broke up, it was definitive, I've moved on." A few seconds later, Derek. "Dude, she's telling people you had some secret mental breakdown and disappeared, that you left all your stuff." Then another message arrived. Derek. "Sarah from the reunion committee messaged me. Said the reunion was a disaster for Chloe." My thumb hovered over the screen. The professional curiosity deepened. I wanted facts, not drama. Me. "What did Sarah say?" There was a long pause. Then the typing bubble appeared. The story came through piece by piece. Derek. Chloe showed up alone, obviously tense. Derek. "People kept asking about you. She gave some vague excuse about work commitments." Derek. "Then Sarah, you remember Sarah?" "Nice, but blunt said, oh, that's a shame. We were all looking forward to finally meeting Mark. Chloe always said he was her rock." The only stable thing in her life. For a second, I stopped breathing. A phantom ache surfaced, then disappeared just. T as quickly. Derek. Apparently Chloe just froze, turned bright red. Couldn't answer. Mumbled something and practically ran to the bar. Derek. Spent the rest of the night getting drunk in a corner with Jessica and crying. Derek. Not the cute kind either, the ugly, messy kind. Derek. Sarah said the whole successful crowd she was so obsessed with impressing basically avoided her after that. Everything got awkward. Derek. And the guy with the G-Wagon, Tyler, apparently asked Jessica if Chloe was always this unstable. I read that last line twice. Unstable. The exact label she had been terrified of being associated with. The flaw she projected onto me so she wouldn't have to confront it in herself. The irony was so precise it almost felt poetic. One final message came through. Derek. So you didn't have a breakdown, you just left. Me. I just left. Derek. Damn. Respect, she's spitting hard, man. It's kind of sad. Sad. That was the expected response. The huma. In response. I searched for the feeling and found only a vast, quiet emptiness where sympathy should have been. Me. Thanks for the intel. Hope you're good, Derek. Derek. Yeah, man. Take care. I set the phone face down on the table. Then I looked out Jake's window at the brick wall of the building next door. Something solid and warm finally rose in my chest. Not happiness at her suffering. Validation. Her performance had collapsed. The audience had noticed the cracks in the set, heard the desperation beneath the actress's voice. The judgment she had tried so hard to avoid found her anyway, not because of me, but because of the person she became while trying to hide me. The life I was rebuilding in that quiet room wasn't fake. It wasn't a performance designed for anyone else. It was real, and her very public unraveling proved that the world I walked away from had always been made of smoke. I picked up my phone and deleted the entire message thread with Derek. I didn't know. Eat a trophy. I didn't need a documented timeline of her collapse. All I needed was the silence and the next module in my course. I opened my laptop. The low hum of the processor filled the room. It sounded like moving on. The messages started exactly 1 month and 1 day after the reunion. The grace period on our old apartment had ended. My phone, silent for weeks except for Jake and Leo, buzzed with an unknown number. Her area code. Unknown number. Mark, we need to talk. This is childish. You can't just disappear. I read the message. The tone was unmistakably hers, wounded authority mixed with accusation, framing my complete withdrawal as immaturity. I felt nothing. No anger. No satisfaction. It felt like reading spam about an expired car warranty. I swiped the notification away. I didn't block the number. I wanted to watch the script unfold. She was a show I no longer watched, but I didn't mind reading the reviews. The next day, another unknown number. Unknown. WN number. I'm sorry about what I said. You took it the wrong way. It was just pre-party anxiety. Come home. We can fix this. You took it the wrong way. The classic revision of history. Come home to what? The empty apartment? The ghost of the man she dismissed? I set the phone back on my desk and returned to my practice exam. The question about firewall configurations held infinitely more interest. The plea came on the 3rd day. Softer this time. More manipulative. Unknown number. The apartment is so empty. I can't sleep. I keep thinking I hear you in the other room. This is cruel. Please say something. Cruel. The hypocrisy in the word almost vibrated. I pictured her there, surrounded by the absence I'd left behind, finally feeling the weight of the space my presence once filled. It wasn't me she missed. It was the audience for her performance. The foundation she assumed would always remain beneath her. I didn't answer. The silence itself became the response. Company. Complete, absolute silence, more articulate than words ever could be. A week later, my phone rang. This time, it was a familiar number. Jessica, the lieutenant. The flying monkey. I let it go to voicemail. She called again immediately. By the 3rd ring, a cold professionalism settled over me. I needed to end this permanently. I answered. Mark, finally. Jessica's voice dripped with brittle concern. Listen, you need to call Chloe right now. She's devastated. She's not eating. She's a complete mess. I said nothing. What you're doing is unbelievably cold. How can you be this cruel? She made one little mistake. People say things they don't mean when they're stressed. I waited patiently for her to finish. When the silence finally came, likely expecting my apologetic surrender, I spoke. My voice was flat and calm, like I was reading terms and conditions. Jessica, this is not your business. I wish you well. Do not contact me again. Then I ended the call. Afterward, I blocked her number. Clean. Efficient. The voicemail arrived 2 nights later from the unknown number again. Her voice sounded ragged, soaked in wine and self-pity. The mask had completely fallen away. "You arrogant bastard," she slurred, the bitterness sharp even through the speaker. "You humiliated me. You were supposed to be there. You were supposed to fight for me. You were supposed to beg me to stay, to prove me wrong. That's what you do. Now everybody knows you left, and they think I'm a joke. They pity me. Fix this. Fix this right now, Mark." There it was, the center of it all. Not regret over what she said, rage over the social consequences. Not a desire for me. A need for me to step back into the role she assigned me in her story, the loyal, forgiving doormat who restored her image. I saved the voicemail, not as a keepsake, but as evidence. A clinical specimen. Proof of the real voice hidden beneath the curated image. After listening to it one final time, I deleted it. The specimen had been documented. I no longer needed it. The ambush happened at my gym, the same place she used to mock as a depressing temple of mediocrity. She knew my Saturday morning routine. I had just finished working out and was walking toward my car, a towel draped around my neck, the endorphin haze softening the edges of the world around me. Then I saw her leaning against my car. She looked smaller somehow. The polished veneer was gone. Her hair was pulled into a messy ponytail. Her eyeshadow was smudged. She wore leggings and a hoodie I didn't recognize. She looked ordinary. Lost. "Mark." She pushed herself off the car, every movement deliberate, performative. "Please, just look at me." I stopped a few feet away. I looked. I saw exhaustion, desperation, and a shattered ego. I felt the same detachment I'd felt while loading the last box into Jake's truck. "You shouldn't be here," I said. My voice stayed even. Not cruel, just factual, like in form. Saying someone they were parked in a reserved spot. It was the wrong response. She needed anger, tears, a scene she could work with. My calm was a wall she couldn't climb. Her eyes filled with panicked tears. "I was stressed," she said, stepping closer. "I didn't mean it, not really. You know how important image is in my industry. I was just trying to fit in." She reached toward me, her fingers brushing lightly against my arm. "You're my person. You're my piece. I can't do this without you." The words sounded like a parody now, an echo of a feeling that had died the moment she called me embarrassing. Slowly, deliberately, I removed her hand from my arm. There was no aggression in the motion, only finality. "No, Chloe," I said, holding her watery gaze. "I'm not. Goodbye." I unlocked my car, got inside, and started the engine. She stood frozen at the curb, her face collapsing into complete disbelief. In the rearview mirror, I watched her shrink smaller and smaller until she died. Disappeared completely when I turned the corner. I didn't wonder what she would do afterward. I didn't care. She had become part of the scenery now, a signpost I had finally firmly passed. 6 months is a long time when you're rebuilding a life. Jake's futon had been replaced with my own apartment, a small one-bedroom filled with sunlight and the smell of coffee and new books. My cloud security certification hung framed on the wall. I'd earned a promotion too. Not a massive one, but enough to come with a title that no longer needed quotation marks. Security analyst. I wasn't finding my path anymore. I was walking it. I'd also joined a study group. That's where I met Elena. Sharp, sarcastic, and armed with a dry wit that sliced through tech jargon effortlessly. We bonded over our shared hatred of one especially unbearable instructor. It was entirely platonic, just two minds that clicked naturally. After our Saturday study sessions, we'd usually grab coffee and decompress. By complaining about coursework. It was effortless. No performance. No image management. Just conversation. We were sitting at our usual coffee shop, a busy place with huge windows spilling sunlight across the tables. I was halfway through explaining a network penetration concept, using a napkin as a diagram. Elena laughed and pointed at my terrible drawing. "So the firewall is basically just this sad little fence?" "A neglected, sad little fence," I corrected with a grin. That was when I felt it. A subtle shift in the atmosphere, like a cold draft slipping through a room. I looked up. Chloe stood about 10 feet away just inside the entrance, holding a to-go cup. She looked aged. Not older. Just worn down. Her hair was perfectly styled again. Her coat looked expensive, but both sat on her like a costume. Her eyes locked onto me, wide with a storm of emotions, shock, hope, and a slow, terrible realization. Elena followed my gaze. "Friend of yours?" she asked quietly. Typically, all humor gone from her voice. "Not even remotely," I said calmly. I took another sip of coffee. Then Chloe moved toward us, crossing the distance with determined strides. She stopped beside the table, completely ignoring Elena. "Mark, hi." Her voice trembled with carefully constructed warmth and surprise. Another performance, but I was no longer buying tickets. "Chloe," I said. I didn't smile. I didn't nod. I acknowledged her presence the same way someone acknowledges a server bringing the wrong order. "Can we talk for a second?" she asked, privately. Her eyes flicked toward Elena, who politely looked down at her phone, giving the appearance of privacy while remaining solidly present. I didn't move. I held my coffee cup in both hands, feeling the warmth seep into my palms. I looked at Chloe at the desperation in her eyes, at the tension in her jaw, and I felt nothing except a deep, grounding peace. She was no longer my ghost. "There's nothing to talk about," I said. My tone matched the one I'd used to state that a server was back online. Simple, immutable. Her face tightened instantly. The hope twisted into something sharper, uglier. Her eyes snapped toward Elena again, this time flashing with open venom. The mask slipped completely. "I see you moved on," she hissed, her trembling voice now fueled by anger. "Is this why you left? You already had her waiting? Was I just some placeholder?" One last desperate rewrite, turning herself into the victim of some secret betrayal I'd engineered. For a second, I almost pitied how exhausting it must be to live that way. I set my coffee cup down carefully. Then I looked directly at her, my gaze steady and clear. A small closed-lipped smile touched my face. Not a happy smile, the smile of someone who has finally reached the end of a long, complicated equation and arrived at a simple answer. "Chloe," I said quietly, firmly, absolutely final. "I left because you told me who you were." "I believed you." I held her gaze. "My life is peaceful now. You're part of a past I don't think about anymore. I genuinely hope you find what you're looking for, but it has nothing to do with me." I paused and let the words settle between us like dust. "Please have a good day." Then I turned back to Elena and picked up the napkin diagram again. So like I was saying about the server architecture, the real vulnerability wasn't the fence. I never watched Chloe leave. I didn't listen for footsteps. I didn't care whether she cried or said another word. My focus was complete. The world narrowed to the problem sketched on the napkin, the friends sitting across from me, the warmth of the coffee, the sunlight pouring through the windows. After a moment, Elena looked up from her phone. "Everything okay?" she asked, studying me with quiet, genuine concern. I met her eyes. This time, my smile was real, easy, natural. "Yeah," I said, and for the first time since that night I knew it with. As completely, absolutely true. A ghost from the past, it's nothing. And it was. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. What do you think about this story? Share it in the comments.